The bare shelves you're seeing aren't, because of a recent outbreak or some looming catastrophe. For millions of people in the United States, this has become part of their everyday reality. In less than 2 years, food bank usage has surged by over 40%. In some areas, grocery stores have vanished completely. The entire structure of how food is supplied across the country is beginning to buckle. And now, in many regions, people are facing a grim choice: feed their families or purchase critical medicine. Hunger is no longer a distant problem in another country. It's arrived on American soil, knocking on the doors of homes in every state and staring back from inside nearly empty refrigerators. This video takes a closer look at 10 states where supermarkets are running dry and food banks are stretched beyond capacity. Hunger isn't just affecting those without homes anymore. It's quietly seeping into the lives of working families, former professionals, and those who once believed they were secure. One of the first states we'll examine used to be a go-to for winter getaways. But now, visitors aren't coming to vacation. They're coming just to eat. Number 1. Arizona. Can you imagine having to drive dozens of kilometers just to get a loaf of bread? This isn't some isolated village or post-disaster zone. This is what daily life looks like in certain parts of Arizona today. In a small town in the southern part of the state, residents live over 20 miles from the closest grocery store. It's not the lack of water that defines the desert here, but the absence of food access. For many seniors without vehicles or family nearby, the only option is a public bus that shows up a handful of times each week. Few realize that Phoenix, the capital, currently suffers from the steepest spike in food prices in the entire country. A staggering 38% hike in just a year and a half. With many national retailers retreating from border and rural zones, large swaths of Arizona have become what experts call grocery deserts, places where buying even basic items like bread feels like a luxury. In Tucson alone, statistics show that 1 out of every 3 children lives in a household that needs help from food banks to get through the week. It's hard to comprehend until you see the hundreds of families waiting outside churches each morning, hoping for bags of rice, packets of noodles, and a gallon of milk. One 68-year-old man who spent 3 decades behind the wheel as a Walmart truck driver reflected bitterly. "I used to haul full loads of food into this state every week. Now, I wait in line to get a box or two from the same places I once delivered to, while other parts of the world are building up local food systems and encouraging community gardens." Arizona's small neighborhood stores are shuttering, not due to a lack of goods, but because so few customers have enough money to shop. Many community leaders have warned that unless something changes fast, vast areas of the state will transform into permanent food deserts, where kids grow up without proper nutrition in what was once one of the world's leading food producers. In this scorched region, the problem isn't natural drought, but a man-made one, an unraveling network that no longer supports the aging citizens who gave their lives to building it. What's truly collapsing? Have you ever seen the grocery store near your home wiped out? Or stood behind someone who waited hours just for a few basic items? If you've experienced anything like this, or know someone who has, your story matters. Someone else out there might be feeling just as alone, not knowing this is becoming a shared struggle. And yet, Arizona isn't even the hardest hit state. Picture a place famous for growing America's food, where its own residents now stand in food lines. We're heading there next. Number 2, Mississippi. It might seem impossible, but the state once celebrated as America's agricultural backbone now leads the nation in child poverty. Mississippi, where crops still grow and fields stretch for miles, is now home to families who line up weekly in the state capital just to get canned goods and basic supplies. In Jackson, the lines outside churches aren't filled with the homeless or unemployed. Many of them are teachers, administrative workers, and parents with full-time jobs who still can't keep food on the table. This crisis doesn't just affect the impoverished anymore. It's becoming the daily reality for many who used to live stable, respectable lives. Changes to eligibility for assistance programs have excluded thousands, even as the cost of living continues to rise. Small farmers in the region are also struggling to compete with large-scale distributors that offer prices so low they can't sustain their operations. So while food continues to be produced in the state, much of it never reaches the plates of the people who live there. According to Feeding America, nearly 2/3 of people visiting food banks in Mississippi today are employed full-time. Having steady work no longer guarantees that a family will have enough to eat. One mother of two holds down 2 jobs, working mornings at a public library and evenings in a local diner. Yet admits there are weeks she can't even afford a carton of eggs, not from lack of effort, but because prices have surpassed what any minimum wage worker can realistically afford. Data from the USDA shows that compared to children growing up in Mississippi during the 1980s, today's kids consume about 30% less protein. What's missing is more than just calories. It's the foundational well-being of an entire generation. The idea of hunger in a farming state used to sound like an error in the system, but now it's becoming the new normal. Here, having a job doesn't mean having dinner. In this place where the land still flourishes and the crops keep coming in, dinner tables are falling silent. Farmers harvest their fields, yet thousands remain hungry. Can you imagine a household with 2 working adults still unable to meet their food needs? Do you know someone who's working themselves to the bone and still can't make ends meet? This is the reality in a nation once known for abundance, a place once defined by opportunity, now marked by scarcity. But Mississippi isn't alone. There's another state, modern and bursting with sunshine, where tons of food go to waste every single day while millions go hungry. We're heading there next. Number 3, California. Every single day, Los Angeles throws away enough edible food to feed several million people. Yet somehow, over 1.7 million households in the same state are still dependent on food assistance to survive. The issue in California isn't a lack of supply, it's a system overflowing in all the wrong ways. This state is the agricultural giant of the US, producing more food than any other region. But the problem lies in getting that food to those who need it most. Unlike countries such as France or Italy, which require grocery stores to donate their unsold goods, there's no such mandate here. That means enormous quantities of still edible food end up in dumpsters, even as hunger reaches new heights. In Los Angeles County alone, an estimated 1.2 million tons of consumable food are discarded each year, while 1 in 4 people struggles to find their next meal. A 74-year-old woman, who once worked as an accountant in downtown LA, now walks multiple blocks every evening to wait behind the farmer's market. She stands silently, hoping to collect produce or bread the vendors plan to throw away. In some European nations, chains are obligated to share leftovers with charities, but in the US, these practices are voluntary, and the majority of excess ends up in landfills. California, often viewed as a land of plenty, where farm to table cuisine is celebrated and fine dining can cost hundreds of dollars per meal, has become a place where a stale roll of bread is a treasure to many seniors. It's a contradiction. Abundance on display, hunger behind the scenes. Have you ever watched someone gather food that others threw away? In the wealthiest food-producing state in the country, people are picking through fallen apples and bruised vegetables just to get by. While we can't overhaul the entire supply chain alone, small actions matter. Ask your local store if they donate unsold food, or consider supporting a group that does. These steps ensure edible food reaches those in need instead of ending up in a dumpster. But if a place as affluent and resource-rich as California can still fail millions of its residents, what about states that lack even the most basic markets? Up next, we're traveling to a region where people drive 90 minutes just to buy rice and milk. Number 4, Virginia. In a quiet Appalachian town, some residents have no choice but to travel an hour and a half just to pick up essentials like milk or rice, not because they live off-grid or by choice, but because every nearby grocery option has shut down. West Virginia, with its scenic mountains and old railway towns nestled in wooded hills, hides an unsettling truth beneath its natural beauty. Many of these communities have become what experts now call true food deserts, areas where supermarkets no longer exist within reasonable distance. Over the past 4 years, nearly half of all locally owned grocery stores in remote mountain counties have closed their doors. Business owners cite unsustainable costs, low foot traffic, transportation issues, and little government help as reasons for shutting down. These closures have left entire communities stranded. What used to be a simple walk to the corner store has become an expensive and time-consuming trek over hills and valleys. According to data from the USDA, about 30% of West Virginia's Appalachian population now lives in long-term food deserts, meaning they don't have reliable transportation and no full-service grocery store exists within 10 miles. There are towns that once supported several stores, a butcher, even a local bakery, Today, all that remains might be a gas station that sells soda, chips and frozen meals, but nothing fresh. No vegetables, no dairy. Imagine being surrounded by forests and mountains, but still going to bed hungry. That's a different kind of isolation, one that food deliveries can't fix, and with younger generations moving away in state. Infrastructure failing to support the elderly or low-income residents, these towns face a bleak future. Without serious policy changes, more and more rural communities in West Virginia may be left behind. The roads and train tracks remain, but if there's no one left who can afford to stay, or no food to buy, then even the town itself begins to vanish. Have you ever lived somewhere like that? A place where you had to travel for hours just to buy vegetables or a gallon of milk? If so, your experience matters. Sharing it could let someone else know they aren't alone. But it's not only the rural towns with this struggle. In one of the country's biggest cities, towering skyscrapers and high-end restaurants cast shadows over neighborhoods, where residents still rely on donated groceries. Let's head to New York. Number 5, New York. Just 25 minutes from Times Square, in neighborhoods far removed from the flashing lights. Hundreds of people gather each day, not for concerts or events, but to wait in line for food. In parts of the Bronx and Harlem, families, seniors, and working individuals quietly stand for hours, hoping to get a carton of eggs or a bag of wilted produce. This isn't due to some natural disaster or national emergency. It's the new routine, driven by rising food prices and rent that eats up nearly every dollar they earn, while just a few miles away. Diners pay over $200 for a single lunch and theater ticket sell out nightly. These residents are struggling to afford the most basic groceries. New York is often portrayed as a symbol of wealth, ambition, and opportunity. Yet it also ranks among the cities with the most severe income disparity in the nation. The contrast between Midtown, Manhattan, and its outer boroughs isn't just about wages. It's about who has regular access to food and who doesn't. In certain low-income neighborhoods, fresh groceries are far away, and even when found, they're more expensive and of poorer quality. If this trend continues, the city risks dividing into two distinct tiers, one that thrives under the glow of billboards and luxury condos, and another that survives in silence beneath them. There are apartments where children eat instant ramen for dinner every night, and adults skip meals to pay the electric bill. The city that never sleeps is starting to overlook those who wake up earliest to keep it running. Did you always imagine New York as a place of endless opportunity and glamour? If you know someone in the Bronx, Harlem, or any part of the city dealing with this every day, their story deserves to be heard. You don't need to live in New York to relate. Every city has a version of the Bronx, hidden behind its own glitzy facade. Sometimes, just pointing someone toward a food pantry or posting about a local food aid group can offer real help to those unsure where to turn. But in another state, the issue isn't long lines, it's that many elderly residents don't even have a place to line up. They're not being ignored, they're being forgotten. Up next, we'll go to Alabama. Number 6, Alabama. In Alabama, a heartbreaking reality is unfolding. Thousands of seniors are being forced to make an impossible decision, whether to buy their medication or eat dinner. These are not people who've never worked. They are retirees who spent decades contributing to their communities. In areas like Montgomery, Mobile, and Dothan, the number of elderly seeking help from food programs has surged dramatically. But now, many food banks have started placing limits on how often people can receive assistance each month. Why? Because demand has far outpaced what they can supply. A volunteer at a regional pantry confessed, "We simply don't have enough to go around anymore. There's not enough milk or eggs for everyone." And it breaks our hearts to turn people away. Alabama has one of the highest proportions of senior citizens in the country, yet their retirement checks and social benefits are among the lowest. Combine that with climbing food costs and skyrocketing medication prices, and the math just doesn't work out. Many elderly residents live alone, lack reliable transportation, and fall outside the coverage of food delivery networks. Feeding Alabama reports that over 60% of the seniors who turn up at food banks have had to start skipping meals just to keep affording their prescriptions. To make things worse, more than a quarter of the food aid centers in the state are operating beyond capacity. So full they've been forced to stop accepting new recipients, at least temporarily. These older adults, once regarded as the moral and social anchors of their communities, now quietly shuffle past half-empty shelves, return home with whatever they're given, and stretch it to last a week. They never complain. They never ask for pity, but they shouldn't have to choose between staying healthy and staying alive. Do you know someone like that? A grandparent, a neighbor, someone who's quietly going without. Just to afford a bottle of pills? Their stories matter, even if they never tell them. But it's not just the aging population being left behind. In another part of the country, we're seeing a rising gap between privilege and poverty. It's a state known for being forward-thinking and environmentally conscious. But food has become a privilege rather than a right. Let's go now to Oregon. Number 7, Oregon. In Oregon, known for its lush landscapes and progressive ideals, a quieter crisis is growing. Where you live now determines whether you eat well or not. Across cities like Portland and Eugene, food access has become deeply divided. Affluent areas boast organic grocers, co-ops, and farmers markets offering every seasonal vegetable imaginable. But just a few miles away, in lower-income neighborhoods, families rely on corner stores and fast food to survive. The difference isn't just about nutrition, it's about dignity. In many parts of the state, grocery chains have pulled out of underserved zip codes entirely, claiming low profit margins. What's left behind are communities with no access to fresh produce, no affordable protein, and no healthy options within walking distance. One single mother shared that her closest full-service grocery store is a 40-minute bus ride away. After working 2 jobs, she often has no energy left to make that trip. So dinner becomes whatever she can find at a convenience store. Oregon has one of the highest rates of food insecurity on the West Coast. Yet the situation is often overlooked because the hunger here doesn't look like the stereotypical images from history books. It's quiet, hidden hunger. Kids going to school without breakfast. Adults skipping lunch to make sure their children eat. Meanwhile, the rising cost of living continues to push working families out of once affordable neighborhoods and into areas where groceries simply don't exist. Local nonprofits are trying to close the gap with mobile food programs and pop-up pantries, but even they admit the demand has outstripped their capacity. These inequalities are sharpening with time. 2 people can live in the same city, pay taxes to the same government, yet one eats organic salad while the other eats chips for dinner. Not by choice, but because that's all they can find. Have you ever considered how far you'd need to travel just to find an apple or some fresh meat? For many Oregonians, the answer is shocking. And while community efforts help, they can't replace a broken system. But Oregon isn't alone in this struggle. In one final state, the story isn't just about who's hungry, it's about the kids. Millions of them, facing a future where going to bed with an empty stomach might become normal. Let's head to Texas. Number 8, Texas. Texas, home to booming cities, massive highways, and one of the strongest economies in the country, is also facing a growing hunger crisis, especially among its children. In Houston, Dallas, and across rural counties, over 4 million people struggle to access enough food each day. And among them, nearly half are children. School may be the only place some of these kids eat a proper meal. During breaks or weekends, many go hungry. Teachers have reported seeing students hide granola bars in their backpacks, not to snack on later, but to share with younger siblings at home. It's not just heartbreaking, it's happening every day. Despite the wealth in Texas, many families don't benefit from it. The state's rapid growth has driven up housing prices and everyday expenses, while wages for working-class families remain stagnant. As a result, more families are relying on food pantries just to stay afloat. But even those are being overwhelmed. The Houston Food Bank, the largest in the US, serves hundreds of thousands every month and still can't meet all the demand. Volunteers work overtime, but resources are running thin. Meanwhile, in rural areas of Texas, access is even more limited. Families drive over an hour to reach the nearest affordable store. In small towns where supermarkets closed long ago, people now depend on mobile food banks that visit once a week, sometimes less. And with climate events like heat waves and droughts, damaging crops and increasing food prices, it's getting even harder for families to afford basic groceries. This isn't a lack of food in the state, it's a lack of access and equity. In a place where cattle ranches stretch for miles, some children go months without a fresh glass of milk. Where trucks carry tons of produce down the interstate, thousands of families can't afford fruit. Have you ever looked at your dinner table and felt guilty for what's missing? Many in Texas do, every night. It's a growing issue that demands more than charity. It requires structural change. The stories of these children matter. And while Texas may be the final state on this list, this crisis isn't confined to one region. It's a national reality, happening quietly behind closed doors across the country. Number 9. Florida. Florida is known for its sunshine, beaches, and booming tourism. But beneath the palm trees and postcard images lies a hunger problem that many choose not to see. In cities like Orlando, Miami, and Tampa, families who once relied on steady jobs in hospitality are now struggling to afford groceries. The pandemic hit Florida's service industry hard, and even years later, many haven't recovered. Long lines at food banks have become the norm, especially in areas where rent has surged but wages have stayed flat. Some parents now skip meals entirely just to make sure their kids can eat. In rural parts of the state, it's even worse. There are entire counties with no proper grocery store for miles. Residents are forced to rely on gas stations and dollar stores, which don't offer fresh food, only shelf-stable processed items. Florida's population also includes many retirees on fixed incomes, and as the cost of living rises, they're being priced out of their own neighborhoods. A growing number of seniors are now turning to churches and food pantries for help. They never expected to be in this position in their golden years, but here they are, lining up for a bag of bread and hoping there's something left when it's their turn. Meanwhile, tourists flood the state, spending hundreds on theme parks and resort meals, unaware that just a few blocks away, locals are trying to stretch a single meal over 2 days. The contrast is startling. Hunger isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's a quiet struggle behind closed doors. And in Florida, it's happening in silence, hidden in plain sight. Number 10. Illinois. In Illinois, and especially in Chicago, the divide between abundance and deprivation is visible street by street. In some neighborhoods, high-end grocery stores are stocked with every organic item imaginable. But in others, residents live in what's called a food desert, a place where fresh, affordable groceries are practically non-existent. On the south and west sides of Chicago, entire communities have been left without a single full-service supermarket. Families rely on corner stores for their daily needs, but those stores rarely offer fruits, vegetables, or anything remotely healthy. It's not just inconvenient, it's dangerous. Diet-related illnesses like diabetes and high blood pressure are soaring in these areas, not because people are careless, but because they've been given no choice. Years of disinvestment have pushed major retailers out of these neighborhoods, leaving residents to fend for themselves. When a grocery chain pulls out, it often takes years or decades for a replacement to arrive, if ever. Some residents have resorted to growing vegetables in abandoned lots just to get something fresh on their plates. Others spend hours commuting across the city just to buy decent groceries. This isn't happening in some far-flung rural town. It's right in the heart of one of America's biggest cities. The hunger here doesn't come from a lack of effort. It comes from a lack of access, opportunity, and investment. When a child has to choose between chips or canned pasta for dinner. Not because that's what they want, but because that's all that's available, we've already failed. Chicago is rich in culture, history, and resilience. But unless we address the food apartheid unfolding in its own backyard, that richness won't matter to the people who are going to bed hungry. What's happening across these states is more than a temporary struggle. It's a warning sign, a signal that something deep within the system is breaking. Hunger is no longer confined to remote corners of the country. It's showing up in cities, suburbs, and small towns alike. It's the teacher skipping lunch so their child can eat. The elderly neighbor heating canned soup for days in a row. The child who thinks cereal for dinner is normal. And the truth is, it doesn't always look like the images we expect. Sometimes it's a clean shirt and a tired face. A quiet student, a family that keeps the lights off more often than not. Hunger has changed. It's quieter now, but it's also more widespread than ever. And yet, the solutions are within reach. Communities are stepping up. Neighbors are checking in. Nonprofits are stretching every dollar to feed as many people as they can. But they can't do it alone. This isn't just about food. It's about dignity, about justice, about rebuilding a system where people don't have to fight for a basic human right. The right to eat. The right to live without fear of the fridge being empty. Maybe you've never had to worry about that. Maybe you have. Either way, your voice matters. If any of these stories struck a chord, take a moment to share this video. Talk about it. Let others know this is happening. Leave a comment. Your words might help someone realize that they're not alone. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. This channel is about telling the stories that often go unheard. The stories that need to be told. Because if we stop talking about hunger, it doesn't go away. It just hides. Let's make sure it doesn't.